Dear distinguished guests, dear friends, I would say, Bled Conference has a very good tradition. What I want here actually to illustrate that we have so many components of innovation systems that it would be right time now to integrate them. We have innovations, we have inventions, and now the journey actually begins after 25 years of very good work. So it's end of beginning. Last year I started with the first slide with E everything almost, and asked us to think about what is beyond those E words. E-commerce, E-inclusion, E-society, E-whatever. Wouldn't it actually be the time after, again looking at the history of 25 years of Bled E-conference, to see that actually we are now talking about something which will be turning into mainstream? Well, we had good examples mentioned in the opening. Well, 45 minutes of establishment of a new enterprise. Where is that in the European scale? Not yet there, even if we have those kind of very good examples. Then some wording to think about, which I hear very often in speeches related to the new society, the transformative nature of ICT. Please don't use the word transparency. I know it's one of our words, but think about that in physical sense. You don't see anything if something is transparent. Momentum is something which, again, coming from the physical things, is very static. Speak about inertia, because then you are speaking about something which is dynamic. Quantum leap. Do you really know anything smaller than a quantum leap? It's the smallest step you can do theoretically. So again, leaps, yes, but again, think beyond. Think about the meanings and transformation about the society for us all. Because again, when we look at innovations, and we are now really in the middle of innovation, sustainable innovation is not a linear process. It's full of disruptions. It's about value choices, and now when we are speaking about the economical, societal, whatever crisis, we are probably facing the deep values of us as a society more than ever before. And it's really beyond the buzzwords. It's something which we need to look at in a very holistic way, and that is what I will touch a bit more later. When we look at the very recent Council conclusions, I think it's very important to highlight some things which are also touching I would say, even past of the Bled conference. It's really about demand-led innovation, how you create the societal demand for innovation together with the ICT. How do you do that transformation in the same way, simultaneously? And keywords for today, of course, coming from the economical situation, I would say economical opportunities, is to look at productivity, innovation, jobs and growth. But again, we need to look beyond what is the word growth. What kind of growth? Is it material growth? It is wealth growth, well-being growth? What kind of societal transformation is interlinked into that? And that is the big challenge, also on European level. When this slide, well, I used this slide first in year 2000, actually in Bled. It's really about looking at the technology-enabled disruptions. You could say technology-enabled revolutions since 1800s. They really were moving from very local type of operations, businesses, even society, to something which is now, through to ICT, as we heard also via the video conference, location and place independent. How do we capture that, you could say, independency in our business models, in our behavioral models, in our societal models? When you go outside watching the man in the street, is the society itself ready for this kind of a transformation where you are actually disconnecting from the local boundaries and timely boundaries. And of course that's a very, very big political challenge as well. When we look at the transformations economically from chaos theory perspective, what you could clearly see is that we had a nicely predictable economic development until the 90s, 95, and then suddenly something became totally unpredictable. We saw actually at that point the society moving from something linear to something highly parallel and became so complex that, sorry to say for the all economists, the economical theory was not able to follow that complexity which was enabled by horizontal connectivity across all kind of organizations. And of course, if we think about that in the future, from technology perspective, we are now living in times where technology is enabling us to move very strongly to a human-centric knowledge society or the Orwellian society. And that is again what I call you all to think about in your choices, when you are doing choices in life, political, technical, whatever. Which kind of future is at our hands? Do you believe that there are these two extremes? At least if we set that in the chaos theory perspective, we are now at the bifurcation point. So it's about choices. Again, an open-ended question. What we also heard by the President this morning, it was really that when we are looking at innovation, it's really including technical, accessing technologies, legal, self-regulatory, and the societal transformation, everything all together. And that's why it's so important that all of us are participating in that. So again, that comes to the word participative innovation, which is really the driver, I think, for Europe today. We have the most demanding citizens, we have the most advanced and demanding industries. So how do we build more on that when we are looking at our future? When looking at, again, research teams, this is a study from MIT from 2002, there is clearly a high correlation between diversity and breakthrough innovations. So again, it comes to one thing which is very important when we look at the ICT as a enabler. We can mash up different technologies, different disciplines, different kinds of people into the innovation process much more than ever before. So again, the intellectual challenges, both for academia, political innovation, is how to really get the diversity working together. How do we pool resources? Diversity is the key. And when we look at, again, from European perspective, this is innovationcities.com site with the references here. They made their own assessment of the most innovative cities worldwide, where you have this kind of mashing up elements, where you see research, development, and innovation happening in the most holistic way. Well, I have there in bold some European cities. So again, if you look at the ranking order, it doesn't look so bad from Europe. We have a potential. But of course, for me, the challenge is how do we develop more of those spikes in Europe, which means that talent attracts talents? How do we create those kind of environments where the innovation success rate is higher, where we make faster integration of the different disciplines, skills, talents for business models? Because again, what we see too much in the literature is the valley of death and the linear innovation process, where you have the science-based innovation leading to technology, products, and production, and different instruments designed for that. But that's not anymore the reality, especially when we look at the ICT society. It's much more that we have a lot of parallel bridges. We need to take them all, and very often actually entering up to something cyclic. You cannot a priori know what kind of innovation you need to have, because you need to have them all. You need to create the market, you need to create the business model at the same time when some technology is even just emerging. So again, various kinds of disciplines, various kinds of skills, mindsets are needed. And this is one of the key things which we are very much concerned about now. How do we see new entrepreneurship in the world scale? Where do we see those hubs emerging which are then turning into business value by new entrepreneurship? We see new entrepreneurs slightly, I would say, emerging in the Gulf area. You see there clearly in US, both the Massachusetts and California. You see Singapore there. And in Europe you see two hubs, and of course the other one is only, if we consider Europe widely geographically, that's Moscow. The other one is London, when we are looking at really the entrepreneurial activity. Of course Europe as such is quite well covered, but we do not have those really dynamic peaks. And that is one of our challenges. How do we create those environments where success rate for innovation is highest possible, where we can attract talent worldwide? And this is, I think, also one piece of the picture. This was shown also in Bled. This is a study from IBM, clearly indicating that the organizations need to break out. When they have assessed where they have the innovation sources, where the innovation is coming from, it's external, of course, business partners and customers, but also internally from employees, but not in their professional roles. And that is, I think, important. They are seeing the employees internally as idea sources, but not in their formal roles in the organization. So again, that is the challenge for the organization. How can you tap both inside and outside the knowledge for I would say again, new business models, new operational models. We are not speaking about open innovation here. We are speaking about really innovation networks and ecosystems where every single, even individual, has multiple roles in contributing to the ideation, to the creation of business models and business wealth creation. Again, when I speak about business models, think about that in a wider context. It's not about the traditional business money thinking, it's about creating value. And here we touch very much the living labbing. This is one of the first pictures drawn upon that. We will hear plenty of the recent development of living labs during the conference already today afternoon, but also in the following days. I think this is one strong component for integrating the different skills. And when we are looking at the networks of living labs globally, we are creating that kind of innovation networking, which I think should have a huge potential for us to progress. European living labs is actually now turning into global. Well, this was the original plan that we would integrate and spread out wider than Europe, and of course you can see that happening when you are able to follow the Living Lab sessions today. When looking at technology development, research, and the emerging innovation system development in Europe, we can say that we are quite well positioned, but the really weak point is business model innovation in Europe in general. When we are looking at business model innovation, we very much go either to Asia or United States, and then we think that, okay, copying some model into the European context, we can do better. But again, I think that we are forgetting the most important asset, and that is the most advanced users, the most advanced citizens, the most advanced user industries? How do we involve them into doing something different? I don't want us to be successful in the 90s Americas. I want us to be successful in this millennium in the world. So again, we need to put a lot more intellect, and also for us policymakers on European level, the same for national levels. The business model innovation is the real critical point. How do we create new value by really emphasizing on value innovation and business scope redefinition? That's the key. How do we bring that into the game? Because again, technology as such, the ICT is enabling changes in a very dynamic way in organizations. And really, we create an organization to do something. Well, you could say it's like a project management, but even more fluid than that. We create pool resources, do the task, and then dissolve. Where do we see that happening continuously? Not that often. So again, it's really about competence nodes networking. This is one of the oldest slides, was actually used in 1996. And I think it's still valid. How do you drive competencies together in a cloud? And now, cloud is one of the hype words today. How do you draw competencies together in a cloud to perform a task? And when the task is developing, how do you drop some competencies and add new? And at the same time, you change the management, the leadership within that cloud, following the real core of the problem. Because I do not think that we have in our minds and in our organizations embedded the tools of how to transfer leadership when the problem is evolving. Who is actually, at a certain moment, the case owner who knows best the solution? Again, calling for entirely new fluidity in organizations and outside. I think this is very, very important when we are looking at moving for systemic innovation. We have the components, we have the thoughts, but we don't have the system. When I look at, again, the ICT as enabler, we are speaking a lot about crowd. I would say crowd resourcing is the important thing in everything. In creating the knowledge, in creating the resources, funding, and also ideation. How do you manage crowds? You don't. You lead crowds. And that, again, is a challenge for many management schools. How do you change from the traditional organizational management to leadership? And the same for I would say, political decision makers. How can we let things go via leadership? Do we have the courage to let things go under, and I say under a leadership, because of course, theoretically, me being a systems engineer, if you let everything bottom up, you don't have a robust system. You need to have some kind of leadership there to get the robustness in the process. You need to have a vision. So not totally bottom up, but leadership is needed. One thing, what I wanted to also say here in this context regarding to the societal transformation is that when we are looking at the organizational pyramid for Maslow, we will speak about this more in the afternoon session, so please welcome to that. When, especially in this economical crisis, we are speaking about company performance, we are too much on the lower levels of cost savings and revenue generation. What I've said very often is that if you want to save costs, you stop all operations and you don't have any cost. So it's really about wealth generation. It's about positioning you yourself as an individual. When we look at the traditional Maslow hierarchy or the company Maslow hierarchies, it's how you position yourself again in the crowd. How do you build the relationships and create value? It's not about cost saving, it's about creating value. And that is what I think we are very much also debating politically. Too much to just shrink and shrink and shrink. Of course, we need to save costs where we can, but we should not stop operations. Again, we are looking at the value creation very much through intangibles. And there the success factors again and again are very much enabled by ICT. How do you network? How do you position yourself? But again, as I said, it's about behavioral change. Are our organizations, are we ready to change our behavior in the way ICT is enabling? Of course, when we are looking at our political goals, we are speaking about single European market and whatever. What does it mean? It means that again, we have different kinds of opportunities to collaborate. But again, it's an opportunity if we don't make that happen. And again, coming on to one aspect, it's not either or. ICT is enabling us, referring to the earlier slides, enabling us to be at the same time in many places, global and local, and share our own competencies towards many directions, to contribute to value creation in many directions at the same time, together with many organizations. It's not anymore that we, even as individuals, are bound to just one role. We contribute to many places, to many contexts. Are the organizations ready? When speaking about innovation, of course, we have the traditional, I would say, new thinking of user-centric, open, systemic, experimental. My Director General says that innovation seems to be moving to adjectival innovation, meaning that we are putting the different kinds of adjectives in front of the word innovation, and then we think that is fashionable. Again, calling back to the thinking, what is enabled, what is really possible is the key. Of course, it's about users because we create the market. It's about open because we need to have the platforms. It's about systemic, to take more, I would say, different components and integrate them. What is important for me is that we have the courage to do experiments, to do prototypes in the real world, because then we can stretch the boundaries of behavior, then we can stretch the boundaries of business models, then we can stretch the boundaries also of technology. Can we create those kind of experimental prototyping environments in Europe, again making talent attracted to work in those places? Well, I'll skip some of these. What is really important is then to look at the creativity and motivation. We will speak about that again on Wednesday more. It's really about courage and commitment and engagement. I hate when people are saying that now they are exchanging information, they are exchanging best practice, because actually then they are just changing information about what they do, and there is no commitment of doing things together. And that is one component of the systemic innovation. Do things together now. Why wait? If you have the 45 minutes establishment of a company, why don't we deploy it throughout Europe? It's a decision. But where are those? Here, one wording comes to my mind again, the stakeholders consultation. When you consider that as I would say more intellectually, you talk with everyone and then you're ending up actually to a committee. So a stakeholder discussion is the same equivalent as we had establishing a committee a few years ago, so no one is taking decisions. So really get rid of that, please. For me, it's really important that when we create those environments, we dare to make the experiments. And of course, dare to fail. We fail often, but in small things. That's not bad. But if you fail dramatically in some big things, that's deadly. So again, failing fast is okay. That's the experimental way of attracting things. If we are, well, think about a project. When we have a project objective defined, let's say 3-4 years ahead, and the whole project is to fulfill the objectives of the plan written. What does it mean to the ambition of the project setting originally? It means that we are not pushing ourselves to the limit. If we are pushing ourselves to the limit, we say that, okay, the objective is this, and we try to do by every means that. And okay, if we fail, we fail, but we have, at least have the ambition level high enough. And I would say if you success in everything you do, your ambition level is far too low. You can do better. 90% success rate is fine. It's extraordinary. And even for venture capitalists, it's 10%. And they do better than most of us. So again, it's about failure rate versus risk versus the reward of the success, and that all is needed. And when I look at, for instance, what we have now listed as drivers for new entrepreneurship, you see that ICT explicit is not in here. But you can read between lines that ICT is the critical enabler for most of this. And when I touch, for instance, the intellectual property rights, you see how, well, thinking about what you read in the literature, you see how conflictual that is today. How do you manage intellectual property rights in crowds when actually the traditional intellectual property rights are made for closing down, closing internal? Do we have that kind of intellectual property rights, for instance, where everything is designed to be open, to be shared, and then builds on that? No, but that could be quite an interesting trial to do in, for instance, some of the smaller member states with 2 million people. Can we create that kind of an open regime of intellectual property right and try to drive that forward? Can that be one of the success factors in Europe? Well, I'll skip that. So again, coming back to the drivers and the challenges, we are moving really from something which is not controllable to something where we need to have the leadership and catalytic things. I like very much the wording a friend of mine said about organizations. There are no organizations anymore, there are organizations. Taking really the analogy of organizations being very dynamic, growing, developing, dying, well, even killing some parts, but really you have something which is more like an amoeba. You don't define the boundaries very clearly. Okay, amoebas have boundaries, but you know anyway the analogy. What is important to think about is, well, again, theoretically and also in practice, when systems become complex, some parts of the systems are controllable, some parts of them are non-controllable, some parts of them are observable, some parts of them are non-observable. Why does our economical and political decision making why is it based only on that controllable and observable subspace and doesn't take into account the complexity? Theoretically, every single system has these 4 components. You can have qualified guesses, but you cannot have precise information. So we should not even think of being able to precisely predict the future. But it's for sure easier to predict the future if you are creating it. As I said, we have the best assets in Europe. Now it's time to put them together. To put them together into the melting pot. I think, well, this is still a few years old picture, but I think it's really telling the dynamics and fluidity what we need into the system. Us, public sector players, we need to create the cooking pot, we need to put the fire, we need to put the energy. But it's up to all of you and us to put the right ingredients for the soup, goulash, whatever you are are making. And it's our duty to see that there are those master chefs which make that pot cooking in the right way with the right ingredients, so that we can tap out from them the results for us all. I do not believe that we can be precise in saying that now we need to have this and this and this and this research. And that is clearly seen also in our future research program in the Horizon 2020, where we have a holistic view on innovation, where we will have significantly different approaches to EU funding, more experimental approach, more prototyping approach, which is extremely important. We need also, and that is what we are now doing, we are really reflecting of the cost of not doing something. The lost opportunity cost is something which is very, very important to take into account into the business model consideration, but also political and policy decisions. How to make the environment very fluid, like it was in the melting pot. I mentioned there the rules of the game, ex post control, ex ante control. We have the mentality in Europe that we want to, well, we wanted to make everything a very nice plan, and that plan was the perfect plan for yesterday. We don't have time for that anymore. We need really to look at some principles which need to be followed, and then make the, I would say, afterwards, the assessment whether it has gone to that or not. And that's true also for the European legislation processes. We should not look at the worst case scenarios up front, because then we are restricting ourselves in the innovation potential. We need to look at the results a lot more. Then a couple slides before I quit. DG Information Society doesn't exist anymore after 1st of July. We are DG Connect. We have changed our organization. You do not see anything of the past technology orientation, technology push, and that is really reflecting also our new mentality. Our focus is on innovation, on evidence-based research, on, I would say, new stakeholders, those which you would not expect us to reach earlier, where policy research is very much integrated and where innovation really is highlighted. I took an example of, well, some slices of our new organization, where you see really our commitment to entirely new areas, new approaches. Well, for instance, the old directorate which was dealing with communications, ICT networks, has net innovation, has experimental platforms, and then the two technology components. But really the approach is much more horizontal, much more focused on innovation. And then we in the coordination directorate have two units, one focused on growth and jobs, one focused on innovation. And in that addition to that, we have in our organization units for stakeholders, for the new players which we want to reach to get the societal transformation. So, well, I'm looking forward for the new organization. Of course, it will be seen how we will be operating, but, well, an example at least how also the Commission, which is probably seen as one of the most bureaucratic organizations in the world, at least in Europe, is able to transform its operations and organizations fundamentally. Please do the same. Come with us to create the European future. Thank you.